Chapter 8 The Quidditch World Cup. Clutching their purchases, Mr. Weasley in the lead, they all hurried into the wood, following the lantern-lit trail. They could hear the sounds of thousands of people moving around them, shouts and laughter, snatches of singing. The atmosphere of feverish excitement was highly infectious. Harry couldn't stop grinning. They walked through the wood for 20 minutes, talking and joking loudly, until at last they emerged on the other side and found themselves in the shadow of a gigantic stadium. Though Harry could see only a fraction of the immense gold walls surrounding the pitch, he could tell that 10 cathedrals would fit comfortably inside it. "Seats 100,000, said Mr. Weasley, spotting the awestruck look on Harry's face. "Ministry task force of 500 have been working on it all year, muggle-repelling charms on every inch of it. Every time muggles have got anywhere near here all year, they suddenly remembered urgent appointments and had to dash away again. Bless them," he added fondly, leading the way towards the nearest entrance, which was already surrounded by a swarm of shouting witches and wizards. "Prime seats," said the Ministry witch at the entrance when she checked their tickets. "Top box straight upstairs, Arthur, as high as you can go." The stairs into the stadium were carpeted with rich purple. They clambered upwards with the rest of the crowd, which slowly filtered away through doors into the stands to their left and right. Mr. Weasley's party kept climbing, and at last they reached the top of the staircase and found themselves in a small box, set at the highest point of the stadium and situated exactly halfway between the golden goalposts. About 20 purple and gilt chairs stood in 2 rows here, and Harry filing into the front seats with the Weasleys looked down upon the scene, the like of which he could never have imagined. Hundreds and thousands of witches and wizards were taking their places in the seats which rose in levels around a long oval pitch. Everything was suffused. I'm not really sure what that word means, but it's okay. With a mysterious golden light, and seemed to come from the stadium itself. The pitch looked smooth as velvet from their lofty position. At either end of the pitch stood 3 goalposts, 50 feet high. Right opposite them, almost at Harry's eye level, was a gigantic blackboard. Gold writing kept dashing across it, as though an invisible giant's hand was scrawling upon it, and then wiping it off again, watching it. Harry saw that it was flashing advertisements across the pitch. "The Blue Bottle, a broom for all the family, safe, reliable, and with inbuilt anti-burglar buzzer. Mrs. Scour's all-purpose magical mess remover, no pain, no stain. Glad rags, wizard wear, London, Paris, and Hogsmeade." Harry tore his eyes away from the sign and looked over his shoulder to see who else was sharing the box with them. So far it was empty, except for a tiny creature sitting in the second from the last seat, at the end of the row behind them. The creature, whose legs were so short they stuck out in front of it on the chair, was wearing a tea towel draped like a toga, and it had its face hidden in its hands, yet those long bat-like ears were oddly familiar. "Dobby?" said Harry incredulously. The tiny creature looked up and parted its fingers, revealing enormous brown eyes and the nose exact size and shape of a large tomato. It wasn't Dobby. It was, however, unmistakably a house elf, as Harry's friend Dobby had been. Harry had set Dobby free from his old owners, the Malfoy family. "Did sir just call me Dobby?" squeaked the elf curiously. From between its fingers it its voice was higher even than Dobie's had been, a tiny quivering squeak of a voice, and Harry suspected, though it was very hard to tell with a house elf, that it might just be a female. Ron and Hermione spun around in their seats to look. Though they had heard a lot about Dobie from Harry, they had never actually met him. Even Mr. Weasley looked around in interest. "Sorry," Harry told the elf. "I just thought you were someone I knew." "But I knows Dobie too, sir," squeaked the elf. She was shielding her face as though blinded by light, though the top box was not brightly lit. "My name is Winky, sir. And you, sir?" Her dark brown eyes widened to the size of side plates as they rested upon Harry's scar. You is surely Harry Potter." "Yep, I am," said Harry. "But Dobie talks of you all the time, sir," she said, lowering her hands very slightly and looking awestruck. "How is he?" said Harry. "How's freedom suiting him?" "Ah, sir," said Winky, shaking her head. "Ah, sir, meaning no disrespect, sir, but I is not sure you did Dobie a favour, sir, when you was setting him free." "Why?" said Harry, taken aback. "What's wrong with him?" "Freedom is going to Dobie's head, sir," said Winky sadly. "Ideas above his station, sir. Can't get another position, sir." "Why not?" said Harry. Winky lowered her voice by a half octave and whispered, "He is wanting paying for his work, sir." "Paying?" said Harry blankly. "Well, why shouldn't he be paid?" Winky looked quite horrified at the idea and closed her fingers tight slightly so that her face was half hidden again. "House elves is not paid, sir," she said in a muffled squeak. "No, no, no. I says to Dobie, I says, go find yourself a nice family and settle down, Dobie. He is getting up to all sorts of high jinxes, sir. Which is unbecoming to a house elf. He goes racketing around like this, Dobie, I says. The next thing I hear, you's up in front of the Department for the Regulation of Control of Magical Creatures, like some common goblin." "Well, it's about time he's had a bit of fun," said Harry. "House elves is not supposed to have fun, Harry Potter," said Winky firmly, from behind her hands. "House elves does what they is told. I is not liking heights at all, Harry Potter." She glanced towards the edge of the box and gulped. "But my master sends me to the top box, and I comes, sir." "Why's he sent you up here, if he knows that you don't like heights?" said Harry, frowning. Master wants me to save his seat. Him a seat, Harry Potter. He is very busy," said Winky, tilting her head towards the empty space beside her. "Winky is wishing that she's back in Master's tent, Harry Potter, but Winky does what she is told. Winky is a good house elf." She gave the edge of the box another frightened look, and hid her eyes completely again. Harry turned back to the others. "So that's a house elf," Ron muttered. "Weird things, aren't they?" "Dobie was weirder," said Harry fervently. Ron pulled out his omniculars and started testing them, staring down into the crowd on the other side of the stadium. "Wild," he said, twiddling the replay knob on the side. "I can make that old bloke down there pick his nose again, and again, and again." Hermione, meanwhile, was skimming eagerly through the velvet-covered tasseled program. "A display from the team mascots will precede the match," she read aloud. "Oh, that's always worth watching," said Mr. Weasley. "National teams bring creatures from the native land, you know, to put on a bit of a show." The box filled gradually around them over the next half hour. Mr. Weasley kept shaking hands with people who were obviously very important wizards. Percy jumped to his feet so often that he looked as though he was trying to sit on a hedgehog. When Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic himself, arrived, Percy bowed so low that his glasses fell off and shattered. Highly embarrassed, he repaired them with his wand and thereafter remained in his seat, throwing jealous looks at Harry when Cornelius Fudge had greeted him like an old friend. Cornelius Fudge had greeted like an old friend. They had met before, and Fudge shook Harry's hand in a fatherly fashion, asked how he was, and introduced him to the wizards on either side of him. Harry Potter, you know, he loudly told the Bulgarian minister, who was wearing splendid robes of black velvet trimmed with gold, and didn't seem to understand a word of English. Harry Potter. Oh, come on now. You know who he is. The boy who survived, you know who. You know who. You do know who he is. The Bulgarian wizard suddenly spotted Harry's scar and started gabbling loudly and excitedly, pointing at it. Knew we'd get there in the end, said Fudge wearily to Harry. I'm not great shakes at languages. I need Barty Crouch for this sort of thing. Ah, I see his house elf saving him a seat. Good job, too. These Bulgarian blighters have been trying to catch all the best places. Ah, and here's Lucius. Harry, Ron, and Hermione turned quickly, edging along the second row to 3 still empty seats. Right behind Mr. Weasley were none other than Dobby the house elf's old owners, Lucius Malfoy, his son Draco, and a woman Harry supposed was Draco's mother. Harry and Draco Malfoy had been enemies ever since their very first journey to Hogwarts. A pale boy with a pointed face and white blonde hair, Draco greatly resembled his father. His mother was blonde too, tall and slim, and she would have been nice-looking if she hadn't been wearing a look that suggested that there was a nasty smell under her nose. Ah, Fudge, said Mr. Malfoy, holding out his hand as he reached the Minister of Magic. How are you? I don't think you've met my wife, Narcissa, or our son Draco. How do you do? How do you do? Said Fudge, smiling and bowing to Mrs. Malfoy. Allow me to introduce you to Mr. Ubslanks, Obalonks. He's the Bulgarian Minister of Magic, and he can't understand a word I'm saying anyway, so never mind. And let's see who else you know. Arthur Weasley, I dare say. It was a tense moment. Mr. Weasley and Mr. Malfoy looked at each other, and Harry vividly recalled the last time that they had come face to face. It had been in Flourish and Blott's bookshop, and they had a fight. Mr. Malfoy's cold grey eyes swept over Mr. Weasley's, and then up and down the row. Good Lord, Arthur, he said softly. What did you have to sell to get seats in the top box? Surely your house wouldn't have fetched this much. Fudge, who wasn't listening, said, Lucius has just given a very generous contribution to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries, Arthur. See, he's here as my guest. How nice, said Mr. Weasley, with a very strange smile.